Do 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 do. Hey, Louie, Louie. Oh, shoot. Okay. Rockfin, let's go. Awesome.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And I want to go ahead and give quick shout outs to people in the chat. Yes. So I did not get a snowstorm today. I know I posted this on Twitter. I went to the grocery store yesterday because I was like, let me go ahead and get this done because I don't want to have to fight with people in the grocery store. And then this morning when I woke up, it was barely snowing and then the snow turned to rain. And it's just been rain for me since. I'm not sure about the rest of Massachusetts, but where I am, no snowstorm. And they canceled school and everything. So when I got up this morning, I was like, well, looks like I'm going to the gym. Because I was like, let me try to go to the gym. I was all prepared to do weights at home because the snowstorm was coming. And then I saw no snow and I said, let me go to the gym, let's do 3 miles and then come back home and get ready for work stuff. So it just very interesting. Shout out to Miguel, who's a Sabby member, says, peace. What's going on? Natalie says, I recently took in a 70-year-old homeless woman who only has Social Security as income. Do any of you know if she can get rental assistance of any kind to help me with utilities? I'm on a fixed income. Natalie, it would depend on the state that you live in. I'm not sure if every state does rental assistance. So it depends on the state, but there may be people in the chat that can, if you tell them where you live, they may be able to help you with that. Shout out to Hannah G says, Rokon man. Yes. What's going on? Lorez says, hello, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Help Sabby watch the ads and smash the like. Progressive Rokana carrying water for the MIC. Yes, he is. And thank you so much for that. Shout out to Steve. Says, hello, everybody. Hello, Steve. Greetings, Oz. What's up? I got to be careful about saying this because I know YouTube will hit it. But you guys can see what Oz is saying there. Yes, I did hear about that. And I feel you on that. I feel you on that. Shout out to my comrade JB says, good evening, my people. Force push the like so that Sabby can reach more people. The force is strong with Sabby. Little bit of Star Wars reference there, guys. Little bit of Star Wars doing the damn thing. Go ahead and hit that like button, guys, and start us off right here. Shout out to Corey, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Tuesday, folks. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Sean, says, yeah. Greetings, Bryce says, sup, everyone. What's going on? Tori says, hey, y'all. Sends love in the chat. Shout out to Danny says, hi. Greetings, Brandy says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Brent says, happy Sabby hour, everyone. Speaking of hours, did you guys know Massachusetts does not have happy hour? I should do a story about that one day. I'll explain to you like how it started, who took it away, Yeah, very interesting. We do not have happy hour here, not as long as I have lived here, but it did exist at one point in time. Shout out to Roger Meadows, says Sabby and JB show last week that I missed. I sat up and watched. SA played innocent about being a Pisces, saying we're sour and sweet. Perhaps your new nickname should be 4S, sweet and sour sassy Sabby. I made a joke with JB last week. We were talking about zodiac signs, and I'm a Pisces, and yes, I do have a birthday coming up. And I made a joke. I said Pisces, we can be kind of temperamental, which is true. Like you never know what you're gonna get with us. Like we can be really, really sweet people, but we can also be really. It's like if you piss us off, we bring the fire. we do bring it. So I said on a play on Sour Patch Kids, I said, first we're sour, then we're sweet. Shout out to Ashura, says that poll better stay on the low numbers in that poll. Yes, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please go ahead and take that poll. That is in reference to one of the stories that I'm going to discuss tonight. Shout out to Wesley, says, hi, gang. Greetings, Randy, says, good evening, comrades. Make revolution my able-bodied comrades. What is going on? Kyle says, ha, love the poll. Yeah, so far I saw no one said no. Watch, someone's going to hit no now. Because I said that. Now someone's going to select no. Just watch. Shout out to CBC Voter, says, happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs. Greeting Deneen, says, hey, Sabby Sabsters. Shout out to Mark, says, Palestine disaster. Oh, East Palestine disaster. Anything that can be traced to capitalism as its cause should be interpreted as treason against the people. Very good points there, Mark. Shout out to Terry, says, hey, Sabby in chat. Greetings, Elena, said 8 inches in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Okay, so Sturbridge, for those who don't know, that's near Worcester, or actually, I think a little bit past Worcester. So that's out there near central Massachusetts. So they tend to get more snow than those of us on eastern Massachusetts, just FYI. Worcester gets hits really bad. Shout out to Black Ronan. We got 5 inches where I am in Rhode Island. Sorry you missed out. Yeah, like, here's the thing. I would much rather have snow than rain any day. Like snow, it's white. If it's powdery snow, it's kind of cute and fluffy. Looks like a big old blanket of mashed potatoes. You can shovel it. But rain, you can't put it anywhere. Like if it's raining, it's just raining. Shout out to Gamer, says, hello. Greetings, Kill Your Gorgies. Hello, Sabby family. Hand pink waving, face blue smiling. That's the StreamYard thing. I don't know why StreamYard does that with some of the emojis. It's really interesting. Okay, Natalie says she's in Washington State. So if any of you watching are in Washington State and you know anything about rental assistance, please respond to Natalie there. It looks like she needs some help. I'm not sure about Washington State. What's going on, Worry? Who's a Sabby member, says, hey, everybody. Shout out to Frank, says, hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. Greetings, Screen Arts Media. The United States must maintain the current economic order. The dollar is world reserve currency. You can only buy oil, energy with dollars. If Russia, full of oil, unite with China, largest, I think you mean a manufacturer there. We're going to get into dollars in just a second. Shout out to James, who's a Sabby member, says, nice. I just started going to the gym. I try to do at least 2 miles at 4.2 miles per hour. I reduced calories 2 weeks now. I'm down 8 pounds. Yo, I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you, the miles, they really get you. I did 3 miles this morning. I think I actually overdid it a little bit because when I got back, I was like, but it definitely woke me up. And shout out to the Oracle, says, hey, Sabby, and hey, everybody. All right, guys, quick shout out to Sabby patrons, and then we'll get into tonight's story. So let's go ahead and give you guys a much needed shout out because you just keep doing the thing. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay. We have quite a bit to discuss tonight. We will do call in tonight after the show. I have a lot to say. There are a lot of stories going around. So what are we going to discuss tonight? Let me go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail there for you. Tonight, we are going to discuss Khanna and Richie Torres, Red Scare. What is Khanna up to? What did he do? And how does this relate to Richie Torres as well? It seems like they're trying to do some fear mongering there. I'll let you use your imagination. We're also going to discuss Richard Wolff alert. He is speaking up about the oligarchy and the problem with mega corporations. We are going to get deep into that tonight as I have a couple of examples to show you exactly what he's referring to. I'm also going to discuss Nina Turner speaks up about primary challenging Joe Biden, not herself, of course, but that there is a need for someone to primary challenge him. And we're going to get into that conversation as well. That's actually going to be the discussion for the call in tonight. I want to get your take on that. And last but not least, Nigeria is in crisis. And I'm really surprised. If you've seen anyone else discuss this, please let me know. So far, I haven't seen anyone else talk about this. And all I'm going to say is Nigeria is having a really tough time right now. Really tough time. I'm going to hit up these comments here, and then we'll go ahead and get into that story. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Aberdeen71. Thank you for the super sticker, Meteor Dreams. Pat Socks want to make leftism socially conservative. He means patriotic socialist, for those who are aware. Thank you for the super chat, Terry. Sabby, I'm also a Pisces. Next week is my born day. Me too. Pisces in the house. Pisces in the house. Shout out to Dissenting Opinion. Thank you for the super chat. No happy hour. That's mad and sad. Yeah. I think I'm gonna cover that one day because that was a shock to me when I moved here. I was like, what? Okay. What's happening in Nigeria? There's a couple of things that are going on. There's it's three issues, but two of them are connected. There are three issues happening in Nigeria right now. And I don't know if you have heard about either one of them, but someone sent me this story and then I started to look for more information and I ended up down a rabbit hole. And that's how I found the other two issues as well. But for those who are not aware, Nigeria is actually experiencing a cash shortage. Not exaggerating here. Now, this is actually coming from the New York Times, but there's other outlets that have covered this as well. Nigeria's cash crunch causes chaos and suffering before crucial election. So there is a presidential election that is, in the works in Nigeria right now. And I'm going to explain how this is connected. Let's go in. Nigeria's government changed the currency design before the presidential election, causing shortages and wreaking social havoc. And I have a video clip I'm going to show you that shows you that havoc in just a second. Fights are breaking out in bank ATM lines where people queue for days just to withdraw a maximum of around $40. Cash shortages are so severe that many cannot buy food or medicine despite having money in the bank. Protesters are venting their anger by burning down banks. Now, who else have we seen do this? This has also happened in France. They burned down the banks before too. I want to explain to everyone why these lines are so long. What you have to understand is that in Nigeria, they don't have as many banks or ATMs as we do. In fact, they have few. So if you have a lot of people that need to take their money out of the bank, obviously these lines are going to be incredibly long. It's very different system there. Most of the time people are using cash. It isn't like, let me go to this store and use my debit card or my credit. That's not, no. Most people are using cash and there aren't many banks. So just keep that in mind. Moving along. A decision by Nigeria's government to replace its currency with a newly designed bill within just 4 months. With a deadline of February 10th has thrown Africa's largest democracy into chaos as it heads towards a presidential election scheduled for this Saturday, February 25th. So that just happened. Most Nigerians turned in their old currency called the Naira, as they are told to do in October by the Central Bank of Nigeria. But when they tried to withdraw the new notes from banks or even informal money brokers, they were stunned to find that few were available. Now, what are informal money brokers? So these are people in Nigeria. They pretty much stand on different streets and you can go to that person and say, I need to withdraw $50. And you get it from that person instead of going to the bank and withdrawing it from a teller. It's a different system there, very different. The cash crisis is now an enormous and unpredictable factor in an election that was already Nigeria's most wide open race in years. The presidential candidates for the two major parties, which have alternated power for over 2 decades and failed to address widespread poverty and insecurity, are now facing a surprise third-party challenger. Well. The government has not made clear what it is trying to accomplish with the currency makeover, offering a gamut of explanations, including that it is trying to rein in counterfeiting and cash hoarding. But the effort has been a disaster, and some suspect there may be a political motive behind the mess because of the timing. Well, imagine that. Voters are now furious at the governing party over the shortage of banknotes, which could undermine support for the party's candidate. Protests, if they continue, could disrupt elections in parts of the country. Turnout could be affected as some voters struggle to afford to travel to faraway polling stations. Let's go on here. Blessing Accord 22 was on the verge of tears as she was josted and elbowed by dozens of people waiting in line for an ATM in central Abuja. That morning at 4 a.m., she had left her baby daughter with a neighbor she didn't really trust and went in search of cash. The heat was intense, but Miss Accord had little choice. Despite having money in her account, she had no cash for food, water, or even bus fare home. She was incandescent with rage at the government and said she would not vote for any Nigerian politician. So I want you to picture what this could be like if this happened in the United States. Imagine you do have cash on you. Some people do carry cash on them. I think a lot of us millennials and Gen Z for the most part don't. But some people do. And imagine if you had cash on you. You couldn't get to the ATM, or you got to the ATM and the line was too long, but it was okay because you had cash on you. Now add on top of that, that the United States changed the currency. It would be crazy here. I think it would be chaotic. So that is what they are dealing with in Nigeria. We've been in hell, serious hell, she said, watching as a man in a military uniform cut the front of the line. It's choking as if they are pressing my throat. So here's a picture here. By the way, this gentleman that you see here, he is one of the brokers that they were talking about. So notice how he's standing there on the street and he has this little device here. So she can go to him and say, I need to withdraw $50, and he would have the money on hand to give to her. Very different than how it is in the United States. Normally, cash is Miss Accord's livelihood. Since Nigeria has few commercial bank branches and ATMs, many people get their cash from professional agents who act as human ATMs. That was that guy. Known as POS, or point of service operators. Miss Accord is among legions of such operators who stand on street corners throughout the country with small stocks of cash and mobile card machines, offering cash to cardholders in return for a small fee. Could you imagine people doing this in the US? That would be interesting, huh? That would be very interesting. What's that, old man Barker? The end is near for the petrodollar. Yeah, people have been talking about that. People have been talking about it. Right now, though, cash is in such short supply that those fees are astronomical. So they're trying to make a profit because they know it's in a high demand. Again, this goes back to capitalism. Prince Shabiz, 37, ducked under a POS operator's umbrella in Lagos last week and asked the price for withdrawing 5,000 naira. A construction worker who earns about 9,000 naira daily, he had spent hours searching for cash to send home to his parents who were running out of food. But every POS, I'm laughing at POS because you know what? In the US, we call POS something else, a piece of bloop. But every POS operator was demanding 30%, 1,500 naira, a huge jump from the usual fee of 100 naira. So like I said, they try to find a way to make a profit. Initially, Godwin Emelfi, the central bank governor, said the currency had to be redesigned because Nigerians were hoarding notes in their houses. Somebody make this make sense to me. You got too much money on you. You got too much, you're saving too much. So we have to change the currency because you're saving too much money. Can't have that. He then said it would help prevent counterfeiting and kidnapper ransom payments, and that it was a step toward achieving a cashless society. Oh, man. Later, he has also claimed it would reduce inflation, which has risen to a crippling 21%. But some analysis, politicians, and dozens of Nigerian voters said that the real reason was to stem vote buying by foiling politicians who had stockpiled naira ahead of election day. Last week, President Buhari said that it had reduced the influence of money on politics. Listen to this, guys. And many Nigerians spoke approvingly of the policy in interviews, but some warned that voters might be so desperate for cash that they would more readily sell their votes. So that's what this is all about. That's why they really changed the currency. President Buhari served 2 terms and could not run again. The governing All Progressive Caucus party selected Bola Tinubu, a former governor of Lagos, as its candidate for president. Let's go on down here, because there's another piece where they connect the cash, and we'll come back to the election part too. Here's another person. Angel Christopher pulled her children out of school, unable to pay the fees because she is selling so few vegetables to cash-strapped customers at the Garki Model Market in Abuja. Hungry diners at a lunch spot ate reduced portions of benga soup, stew made with palm fruit, because the chef, Teresa Tota, can't afford to buy as many ingredients. See, this is affecting everybody. This is a huge effect here. Now, that being said, I can pretty much guarantee you people who are rich, wealthy people in Nigeria, they're probably not affected at all. Let's move on. A livestock owner desperate for cash in Northeast Borno sold his sheep for a fraction of the usual price. A Ocean Blue strip club in Lagos, lap dancers have started accepting bank transfers. Uber drivers now routinely phone passengers before pickups to ask if they're paying cash. And if not, they cancel. Whoo, man. This is a mess. This is a mess. The crisis has been compounded by the scarcity of fuel. This is the piece I want to hone in on right about here. The crisis has been compounded by the scarcity of fuel. Lines at gas stations rival those at ATMs. Some customers sleep overnight in their vehicles to get gas, and some pay double the official price. Industry officials blame the high cost of transporting fuel to and around the country. But Nigeria is one of Africa's biggest oil producers, and many citizens blame government mismanagement. Now, hold that thought about the fuel. Because one of the reasons why they're saying there's a fuel shortage, there's two reasons. One reason is because they rely on import and export, right? That's one of the reasons. But there's also this reason, and I think we need to highlight this. Nigerians blame fuel shortage on Ukraine war fixed prices. See, a lot of this is going right back to this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I'm not going to read this entire article, just this part right here. I'll make this bigger. The font's a little bit. There we go. Just these first two paragraphs. Nigeria is grappling with widespread fuel shortages that are forcing motorists to spend hours in line to buy gas and causing prices to surge for transportation and basic commodities. And then this piece here, Russia's war in Ukraine has caused prices to import fuel to go up by more than 100%, but retailers complain they can only charge the price set by the government, causing them to operate at a loss. So again, they're relying on that import of fuel. So part of it is because they do rely on the import of fuel, but the real big reason has to go back to the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. So they have a cash shortage. They have a fuel shortage. And I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. Let's take a look at this, what it looks like right now in Nigeria, because this is absolutely crazy, you guys.
They've gotten all the whole money. All the leadership of the bank.
Let me put the captions on so you can see what he's saying. So under here, it says savings of millions remain trapped in banks. So it's not even so much that people don't have money. Some people have money, but they can't withdraw it. They can't get the money out. Let's go on. That piece is really important. Let me make this a little bit louder for you, because I think, let me go back just a teeny bit. And I'll make it a little bit there where he said they did this policy for the poor, but the rich men already collected their money. It's in their houses, not in the banks. You see the problem? And that's what I was saying. Like, the wealthy people in Nigeria not having to deal with this issue. They already got their money, but all the poor people have to wait in those long lines, waiting to withdraw their money from the bank. Those that are POS, the ones that have the card machines where they give them the money, they're like a human ATM or whatever, they can afford to charge high fees because they know people are desperate for the money. And I'm going to fast forward. I thought there was, I don't know how many times they showed that same video. I think they showed that over and over. Oh yeah, because they did that live. Okay, so that's just a taste. So those were the two issues you saw. The cash shortage, and the other issue was the fuel shortage too. So they're having to deal with that as well. And there's a third issue. And that one has to deal with voting. So it just, shout out to Case Study QB for this one. Would-be voters angry over not being able to cast ballots. Now, this again is happening in Nigeria. So they have three things happening here. This is crazy. Here we go.
Fighting for the right to vote in what could be Nigeria's tightest presidential election ever.
People getting pretty agitated here. It's day 2 since the election. They should have voted, but they didn't get to vote. It's become so hectic that the military has been called in to try and keep the peace.
The Nigerian army rolled into a neighborhood in Lagos where voters at 2 polling units spent all of election day waiting to cast their ballots, but poll officials did not show up. They returned the next day and waited several more hours, growing impatient as the chance to vote slowly slipped away.
Nothing works in this country. Nothing works in this country. There is no security. There is no good hospitals. There's neither good roads. Nothing works. The educational system is in shambles. And for once, youth are coming out to vote. And we are being disenfranchised in broad daylight. It is heartbreaking.
Abigail Samuel.
So what she's saying there is they actually have a pretty much record number turnout for younger voters to come out and participate in that election. and they're not even able to cast ballots. So it's just, there's so much going on in Nigeria right now. It's crazy. And then you add this on top of it. So even though there's a cash shortage, there's a fuel shortage, people trying to get money in banks that they have that they can't get out, and they're being charged high fees from those that are the human ATMs, so to speak. The young people still came out in record numbers to vote. And it's hot. So put all of those things together, and you would say that Nigeria is not having a good year so far.
Spain, shared by other young people who registered to vote in record numbers in this election, hoping to reboot a deeply dysfunctional Nigeria.
I must fight for my daughter, praise. I must fight for her. She must have a better life. She must go to better school. I'm tired. We are tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing this crap.
Officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission say they're already tallying the results of the area without the missing polling units.
We use constitution. Anywhere there is violence, there's no way to vote again.
But CNN saw no signs of violence at the polling units, where election workers did not show up as people cast ballots just steps away.
So there will be no other election in these places where the election didn't take place?
There's no other election again. There's no other election. The election we want to do is what we've done.
The disenfranchised voters see this as an attempt to deny their preferred candidates crucial votes by the establishment. In an election without an incumbent president or a former military leader running, it was seen as a fresh start for Nigeria.
We are suffering in this.
I just wanted to add someone just mentioned in the chat, I was going to say this as well. Yes, Corona. Speaking of this, apparently Stacey Abrams is in Nigeria to observe the elections. That was next on my list to mention. So the US is even involved with you see the problem? Let's go on.
We are suffering. It's very bad. I don't even call them leaders. I call them rulers.
Musician Banky W stood on the main opposition PDP's ticket in the Lagos area with the affected voters.
They understand that their votes are their voices and they want their voices to be heard. So when it starts to seem like there's allegedly some sort of intentional suppression of that voice, people get frustrated, people get agitated.
Nigeria's agitated youth could be a powder keg at risk of exploding if enough of them feel that their voices were not heard in the most significant election of their lifetime.
What did voting mean to you?
It's my choice and I did my best. That's what it means to me.
Larry Medowo, CNN, Lagos.
So, pass this on to your friends and your family members as well, because I don't think most people even know what is going on in Nigeria right now. I couldn't imagine having to deal with all of that like at once. It's crazy. That's crazy. .com says, when I went to Nigeria, I found that some people traded prepaid minutes on cell phone calling cards as currency. And you see, A06. Yes, Sabby, the wealthy and politicians that sell out to the US and the UK live lavishly. The vast majority of people have it rough in Nigeria. Yeah, and I think there's this myth too, and I've seen this before on, don't fault me, but I've seen this before on some of these housewife shows where they're like, oh yeah, we want to marry a Nigerian guy and they have money and da-da-da. And that's not the case for most people in Nigeria. And I thank you so much for saying that. That's important for people to know. Mr. says Nigeria needs to disconnect from the petrodollar. That's another piece of conversation to have. Christian says people would riot. Yeah, in the US, they would. Like people, listen, the fact that they're still waiting in that line, because I think Americans would have already lost it. Like, we're not the most patient people. We're really not. JB says, so the problem is hoarding wealth. Same thing here in the US. There you go. So this is a preview for what is coming here. I'm trying to warn people. I'm trying to tell you guys what is happening internationally, like what is happening globally can still affect us here in the United States. Corey says, I feel like the West intelligence community is messing around in this in some way. Wouldn't put it past them. Miguel says Stacey Abrams had nothing better to do. Yeah, it's just really weird. Like, why are you there? Why? Strange to me. Strange. Thank you for the super chat, Justin. Anthony Blinken and Samantha Powers were on Get Out the Vote ads in Nigeria. The U.S. is definitely trying to influence their bloop. I have to be careful what I say here. Thank you so much for that, Justin. Crazy stuff, especially during the time when people there can't even get access to their own money. We have to pay attention to things like this. We really do. So pass that on to people, guys, because I don't think many people are aware of what's happening there. And speaking of international, we need to talk about Khanna's visit to Taiwan and this connection to Richie Torres as well. Now, before we get into all this, I want to go ahead and say and make this very clear so that people are not confused. When we talk about this conflict between Taiwan and China, you do have to understand that Taiwan is a part of China. It's not his own thing. It is a part of China. So it's important that you know that before we get into this piece. So Khanna was in Taiwan. He's not the first to go there. Last year, Nancy Pelosi went there. Ed Markey also went there. So there have already been trips to Taiwan from U.S. politicians. Obviously, when Nancy Pelosi first went there, we kind of shrugged a little bit and was kind of like, oh, why would you go there right now? It's almost like you're trying to make China angry in some way, shape, or form. But multiple U.S. politicians have been there now at this point. And I want you to hear how this turned out. It says U.S. lawmakers visiting Taiwan affirm shared values. And what do they mean by that? This is actually a bipartisan effort. So it is Republican politicians and Democrat politicians coming together for this venture. So again, this just goes back to show you that when it comes to bipartisanship, especially when it comes to war, imperialism, intervention, they get on the same page. See, they can come together and do bipartisanship for war, for conflict abroad, but they don't want us to come together and oppose war. Some people didn't want leftists to come together with people who were libertarians for the Rage Against War rally because they said, no, you don't cross the line. But it's okay for these politicians to cross the line to be pro-war. Make it make sense. So going in here, so there is Khanna meeting with the president of Taiwan. And let's dive in here. A delegation of U.S. lawmakers on Tuesday met with Taiwan's president, who promised to deepen military cooperation between the two sides, despite objections from China, which claims the island as its own territory. It's really interesting here. It says it claims it. That's because it is. I don't know. The group was one of many U.S. delegations President Tsai has welcomed in recent years, even as Beijing has stepped up diplomatic and military harassment of Taiwan. China responded to foreign visits by holding large-scale military exercises seen by some as a rehearsal for a blockade or invasion. Beijing has not ruled out the use of force to unite Taiwan with mainland China. Although the sides have been separated since a civil war in 1949, and most Taiwanese prefer to keep the status quo of de facto independence. We're going to get into this in just a second because I do have something from Danny Haifong I want to show you in reference to this. And this story also has to deal with the poll. So if you haven't had a chance to take that poll, go ahead and do that. Tsai thanked the lawmakers for coming, saying it's a chance to deepen ongoing cooperation in a semiconductor chip design and manufacturing, renewable energy, and next generation 5G mobile networks. Taiwan and the U.S. will continue to bolster military exchanges. Going forward, Taiwan will cooperate even more actively with the U.S. and other democratic partners to confront such bold challenges as authoritarian expansionism and climate change. Let's go on. Tensions between the U.S. and China increased after Washington shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon. Oh boy. That Beijing maintains was an unmanned weather balloon. It was a weather balloon. Bitches. They're still talking about it. They're still bringing it up. Both sides are also in opposition on the war in Ukraine, and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken warned Sunday that Beijing could be considering providing weapons to Russia for the war. Now, isn't this what we predicted? We have to remember BRICS. So China and Russia are a part of BRICS. And this is what we've been trying to warn people, right? Isn't this what Jose has said every time he's confronted politicians and he's told them, you need to keep us from a nuclear war? This is exactly what we've been talking about. This is what we talked about at the Rage Against the War rally. Like, you think that it's just going to be Russia? You think China wouldn't come in to help Russia, to aid them? They're a part of BRICS. They're together, man. This is what we've been trying to tell people. Let's go on. Taiwan remains a flashpoint. Wang Yi, the Chinese Communist Party's most senior foreign policy official, said over the weekend that Taiwan has never been a country and it will not be a country in the future. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We are here to affirm the shared values between the U.S. and Taiwan, a commitment to democracy, a commitment to freedom. That's coming from Khanna. The U.S. under President Biden's leadership seeks peace in the region. Okay, yeah, they seek peace. All right. We're going to show you how that's not necessarily the case. He is accompanied by Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas, Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts, and Jonathan Jackson of Illinois. The group met with their legislative counterparts Monday, as well as Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company founder Morris Chang. Khanna also offered a tribute to former President Jimmy Carter, who recently entered hospice care. He was president when Congress passed the Taiwan Relations Act, under which the U.S. must ensure Taiwan can defend itself. Now, I want to highlight this piece here, defend itself, right? Because we've seen this phrase used often. This phrase is also used in reference to Israel and Palestine. Haven't you heard people say this before? Israel has a right to defend itself. You know, it's let me tell you what that really means. Let me tell you what that really means. That means that the United States government, if needed to, they would supply them with the arms so that they can do that. It's always interesting. It's always interesting because it's one country has the right to defend theirself, but the other one doesn't. And that's how they put that. Now, Khanna actually did an interview. Oh, am I going to that yet? Let's go to Danny next. So Danny talked about this on this show with me. Now, this was a couple of months ago, I think, when we first started hearing about this issue. And Danny breaks this down so great. So listen to what Danny says. Like, this is kind of like his wheelhouse. Like, he talks about China a lot. But listen to how he explains what's really happening here.
And it's rarely talked about like this because the narrative that the Western media likes to push out is that China is the aggressor. China is seeking to dominate the island. Now there's this comparison between Taiwan and Ukraine, which is absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. It's a completely different situation. But the one similarity here is that the United States, similar to what happened in Ukraine, instigating, interfering politically, the United States is doing that in Taiwan. It just so happens that Taiwan is not an independent country. It is part of China, and it is recognized as such by the vast majority of the international community.
So how can China, like, technically, if Taiwan is a part of China, then technically, how can China invade a country that's already a part of China? So that goes back to some of the talking points that I'm hearing from mainstream media and Joe Biden himself, who said that recently, I think it was a couple of days ago, that if China were to invade Taiwan, that the United States government would get involved and back Taiwan. But technically, you can't invade a country that's already a part of your country. Make it make sense, people. Someone make it make sense to me, because that would be like, you know, Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. is the District of Columbia. It's not a state, right? So there is this push for DC to have statehood, but it does not have a state. That would be like someone saying that Maryland or people from Maryland are going to invade DC when it's like, how do you? They're both a part of the same country. Do you see it's just weird. I don't know if that's the best analogy or not, but you get what I'm getting at. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. But there's something else that Danny says here.
And that's exactly right. So China treats Taiwan, and it has done so ever since the Chinese Revolution, right? It has treated Taiwan as kind of similar to how Hong Kong is an administrative region of China, so it is slightly different. But in terms of the orientation toward Taiwan, China has treated Taiwan as sort of like a one country, two systems model, right? So Taiwan is considered part of China. And of course, there's a very complex history, a lot of political differences. And so China has allowed Taiwan to continue its system. And really, the whole move forward has been peaceful reunification. That's the goal, to integrate Taiwan and China as close together as possible economically and in all sorts of other areas, because there are a lot of ties, right? I mean, we're talking about an island that has centuries, right? Centuries upon centuries worth of history, families that have bonds with each other on both sides, right? So there's a lot of interest in peacefully reunifying. But when Biden made these comments, and that was the third time he has made such comments, the third time he has said, if China invades, quote unquote, Taiwan, then the United States would intervene militarily. When he says these comments, basically what he's doing is he's throwing out basically 50 years of U.S.-China diplomatic relations, right? He's from the 1972 joint communique all the way to the 1992 consensus, all of which state that the United States recognizes one China. It recognizes that Taiwan is part of China. Essentially what Biden is doing is throwing that out in favor of U.S. hegemonic, U.S. militarist interests, because really what saying such a thing is all about is nothing to do. It has nothing to do with facts of the matter, with will China actually invade Taiwan. It's all about feeding the military-industrial complex.
There you go. That is really what this is about. Now, if you want to see that full conversation, you know what, Eric? We should clip this whenever we get time, because we didn't clip this interview. We should clip it, because especially now, considering Khanna just went to Taiwan. But this was posted 8 months ago, and it's on that same stream where it's Ryan Grimm and Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Nomiki Kuntz, Emma Vigilant. Man, that's a lot of names. But anyway, it was posted 8 months ago. So if you want to see the full thing, but I'll see if we can clip it too, so that way you guys can have that clip just to refer back to. And now here is Khanna, because I want you to remember what Danny just said. It's more about feeding into the military-industrial complex, okay? The United States government doesn't really care about these people. I don't know how else to say it to people, but they really don't. If there was no money involved for this, they wouldn't even be there. Now, Khanna had an interview on Fox News, of all places, about this particular issue and about his visit. Listen to this.
Well, the Chinese have not responded to this latest news on Saudi Arabia offering this $40 million in aid. What they have responded to is an American delegation that made its way to Taiwan over the last few days. Republicans and Democrats both. That did not sit well with China. They called it a provocative act. We had two congressmen part of that journey, back from that journey, California Democrat Representative Khanna and Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Obviously, this was a bipartisan effort, and to you, Congressman Gonzalez, first, why make the trip, knowing that the reaction would be just as you discovered from China, that it was provocative, almost as bad as when Nancy Pelosi went, they said. Yeah.
In other words, he's asking, why the hell do you guys keep going there? That's the street translation for you. Why the hell do you guys keep going there? There was a lot of controversy over it when Nancy Pelosi went there, and more people went there. And now you're going there too, Khanna. Why you guys keep going there? That's really what he's trying to ask.
Now, here in the House, we don't pay attention what the Communist China propaganda puts out. It's important that the House lead, though. And too often we point to the White House.
Notice how they always throw communists in front. Listen to this. Let me see. Notice how they always lead with this. Listen.
Almost as bad as when Nancy Pelosi went, they said.
Yeah, now here in the House, we don't pay attention what the communist China propaganda puts out.
The communist China propaganda. That article that I read to you earlier also referred to it as that way. And I think it's important for people to understand too, technically, and you can look this up if you don't believe me, technically, we do not have a true communist country. Not one. Let's go on.
It's important that the House lead, though. And too often we point to the White House for not doing X, Y, or Z. You know, the House of Representatives is an equal branch of government, and this is an area that is a bipartisan effort to go all across the globe and stand with our allies. You know, when I was, you talk about provocative. When I was in the Navy, we used to fly on a P-3 surveillance flights against China, and China would come out and they would harass our airplanes. The exact same thing is happening now. The only thing is they're harassing our P-8s. So this is dangerous. China is being irresponsible in the way they're reacting, and it's important that we have bipartisan direction when we go out and talk about it in the world.
I do feel like the U.S. is provoking them at this point. Again, these multiple visits to Taiwan, it's obviously making a statement, telling everyone that their balloon was a spy balloon when it's been clear that this was a weather balloon. Like, it is very obvious that the United States is trying to provoke them. Now, there are many criticisms that you can make of China in reference to its government. But at the same time, I feel like the U.S. is really trying to push a conflict here where there really should not be one.
Switching to you, Congressman Khanna, as you know, we're committing now 200 troops to Taiwan, I think from around 30 now. And that is something else that's not been greeted favorably, not surprisingly, by Taiwan. Do you support that? Because some look at that as a preview to coming attraction that will send still more troops and more and more. What do you say?
Our commitment to train Taiwan in its own self-defense is appropriate. And I think there's nothing provocative.
See how they always refer to it as defense? Notice how they always do that? So he's letting you know right now, and I have something else I'm going to show you too. It is our duty to train them in their own defense.
About American politicians going to Taiwan, given our economic ties with semiconductors, given that Taiwan is a democracy, given that President Carter, who signed the Taiwan Relation Act and recognized China, was in Taiwan in 1999.
But President Carter right now is on his deathbed. You know, it's just like now all of a sudden you guys want to bring up President Carter's name. You guys ain't have anything to say about Jimmy Carter the past, decade?
So there's no reason for China to think that American politicians, continuing in a tradition that President Carter actually started, going to Taiwan is any problem. So
it's Jimmy Carter's fault. See, you see how they passed the buck. Khanna is notorious for doing this, blaming somebody else. Well, actually, it was this person who started it. Just because someone started it doesn't mean you have to continue it. Sounds like excuses to me.
Let me ask you both this, Congressman Gonzalez. If China were to invade Taiwan, is that an act of war to which we should commit our troops?
I think President Biden has made it very clear that we are going to stand with Taiwan, that we are going to remain there by our allies. But we got to get to a point. I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I want to prevent wars. I don't want to see America get dragged into another war, whether that's in Taiwan or elsewhere.
No, I disagree. If you really wanted to prevent wars, then why did you go over to Taiwan in the first place when you knew that that would escalate the situation? If you really wanted to prevent it, we'll have to look up and see how Tony Gonzalez voted in reference to sending money to Ukraine too. We'll have to look that up to see if he really wanted to prevent war.
I understand that, but if China invaded Taiwan despite that, is that an act of war to which we should commit troops?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I would argue that China.
There it is. There it is. Notice he had to ask the question twice because he didn't answer it the first time. So he's letting you know if China were to invade Taiwan, he said, would that be a situation where the US government would send US troops. He said, oh, absolutely. So get ready, guys. Get ready. We already have one conflict happening right now. And it's just like they can't go 1 year without another potential conflict. Can't go 1 year without it.
Doing that exact thing right now in the cyberspace. That's where these wars start. They start in cyber and then they go on from there. So it's absolutely important that we have a bipartisan delegations continue to make this trek and show that America is going to stand by its allies.
Bipartisan, like I told you. See, they can be bipartisan for pro-war, or as they like to call it, defense. They can be bipartisan for that, but we can't be bipartisan out on the streets against war.
All right. Does that mean then to you as well, Congressman Khanna, that China invading Taiwan, to take it back, as it says it's theirs anyway, that we should commit ourselves to protecting Taiwan, defending Taiwan, having U.S. soldiers in Taiwan?
Well, first of all, let me just echo what Representative Gonzalez said. We can and will avoid war in China. That was clear to me meeting the president there and the leadership there. If we help Taiwan build up.
That's not what Gonzalez said. Ro Khanna said, let me echo what Gonzalez said. We can prevent war with China. That's not what Gonzalez said. Gonzalez said, yeah, oh, absolutely, in reference to if they would send military troops there. That's what he said. Did we listen to the same interview? Did we listen to the same conversation? So I'm a little bit confused because it doesn't sound like you're trying to prevent any type of conflict with China. Based on the behavior that I've seen from politicians in DC over the past couple of months, it seems like you're trying to escalate things. That's what it seems like to me.
Its defense and deterrence, and at the same time have engagement. There's no reason there needs to be war, and that should be the goal. War there would be catastrophic for the world and the American economy.
It certainly sounds like China.
That's Ro Khanna, the politician talking there, because that's Ro Khanna trying to save face. Because remember, he's supposed to be a progressive, so he knows he needs to be careful with what he says here. You see what I'm saying? That's right. That's right, Damon. That's exactly right. He's lying. So he knows. That's the thing. He knows. Well, let me be careful. Let me not even mention, yes, we would do that. We would go to war with them. I got to be careful.
Preparing for something here. They're not just ranting out of, vapor. So I'm just wondering whether you would support that if it came to that.
I would support what our policy has been with the Taiwan Relation Act, which says that we will support Taiwan in its defense. It's purposely ambiguous, and it would be the call of the commander-in-chief at the time. I think that policy has served us well from a national security perspective since the days of Nixon and Kissinger, and I affirm that policy.
See, he wouldn't answer the question whether or not he would support war with China. He said, oh, I support the policy that we have right now with Taiwan. He doesn't want to go on record. See, that's how they prevent going on record, by saying that. And he's already gotten some pushback in reference to that letter that he signed about the Nazification in Ukraine in 2018. He's already gotten pushback. People are saying, like, why did you vote to send the money when you signed that letter in 2018? So that's him trying to prevent himself going on record by saying, yes, I would agree with that. But it's not just him, because there's more. I told you they've been fear-mongering people about Russia. They've been fear-mongering people about China. And it's not just Ro Khanna. Now here you have Richie Torres. He has the audacity to stand up here and talk about human rights. Listen to it. Don't even get up out of your seat yet. Listen to what he says about human rights. And then I'm going to tell you why he's another fraud. Now, this is in reference to China. And by the way, this is his tweet. He says the Chinese Communist Party has a network of overseas police stations, hidden in countries like the US that terrorize Chinese human rights activists. How can we claim to be a defender of freedom abroad if we fail to defend freedom fighters here at home on the US soil? Now, we're going to get back to that statement because he's a hypocrite. But listen to this. Oh, not Twitter again. Twitter's videos. I hate that they do this sometimes, but sometimes they do. It's like you have to refresh it. But it's just really funny to me. He has the nerve to talk about human rights. Please.
From opposing political parties, we're sending a powerful message that the defense of human rights from the abuses of the CCP is not a Democratic value or Republican value. It's an American value. I am not here because I'm a Democrat, and Mike and Neil are not here because they're Republicans. We are here because we're Americans who believe in the rule of law and human rights and freedom for every single person, including the Chinese dissidents here in the United States.
That's a lie. If he believes in human rights for every single person, then why is it recently when he was confronted about the Palestinians in reference to Israel and Palestine, why did he continue to go on and make excuses for the behavior from the state of Israel, the government, towards the Palestinians, pushing them out, basically committing apartheid? He made excuses for the state of Israel. He was asked multiple times when he was confronted at his meeting in his own district by his own constituents, what about the Palestinians? What about the Palestinian people? Isn't that technically a human rights violation as well? The way those people are being treated there. And a lot of times people bring up the Palestinians, but it's not just about them, because we also need to talk about the Ethiopians who are there too, who are also being pushed out, who have also had racist attacks. So it's not even just the Palestinians. He didn't want to support them at all. Go back and watch the clip on Jose Vega's Twitter page. Go watch that clip again. We covered it on the show. No sympathy for the Palestinian people, just for the state of Israel. Now, there's a reason for that. Because if you look at his donors, I'll pull that up in a second. Let's finish the video. I'm going to show you why he has the views that he has.
We know that the CCP has a global system of surveillance that not only includes high altitude surveillance balloons, but also oversees police stations. And we know that the transnational policing is not actually about the solving of crimes. It's about the systematic surveillance and suppression of political dissidents. It's about striking fear in the hearts of critics of the CCP.
Now, he can condemn the police in reference to this particular situation, but he supports the police when it comes to protecting the rights of Americans in this country, because he was against defunding the police. He spoke out against it. So when it comes to protecting unarmed people, especially unarmed Black people that are killed by the police, he protects the police. But you can protect the people. See, this is the thing. When it comes to the Asian American people, and no shade to them, but when it comes to the Asian American people being protected, he's willing to call out the police state. But he can't call out the police state when it comes to them killing unarmed Black people. Can't call out the NYPD. You guys see how this works? This is why I said these people are all frauds. Let's go back. Let's go back in. There's more.
Freedom has no greater enemy than fear, and striking fear is the point of CCP policing. And so we have a moral obligation to stand with you, to stand for freedom fighters.
He has a moral obligation to stand with them, but not the people in his own district. He doesn't have a moral obligation to stand. He won't stand with his own constituents. Well, I've seen this on video, by the way, but he'll stand for them, because that is an attack and criticism against China. Meanwhile, inciting fear in the American people about China and spreading that.
How can we, the United States of America, claim to be a defender of freedom if we fail to defend freedom fighters within our own borders, here on U.S. soil? A few years ago, the FBI said, the Justice Department said that it's committed to turning Operation Fox Hunt on its head so that the hunters become the hunted and the pursuers become pursued. And we will see to it that that promise is kept and that freedom is defended and justice for dissidents is delivered. Thank you.
Freedom for who? You see how that's why it's just, there may be disagreements between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, or some people in the Republican Party right now, when it comes to this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There may be some disagreements there where some Republicans are like, no, we need to stop sending money to Ukraine, like that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, both parties are pro-war, and they definitely come together when it comes to demonizing China. Both of them. Now, shout out to Garland Nixon for sending me this, because I want you to hear something that Lindsey Graham says in reference to China and Taiwan. Listen to this. Pay very close attention to what he says. Not this again. That's Twitter for you. Let me try to refresh it. Because this is foreshadowing. He's giving you a hint as to what is probably going to happen.
As long as they're the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So if you want to receive what Putin did, try to go into Taiwan. They're going to fight to the last man in Taiwan. They're going to fight to the last man in Taiwan. And we're going to strangle the Russian economy as long as they're the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So if you want to receive what Putin did, try to go into Taiwan. They're going to fight to the last man in Taiwan. They're going to fight to the last man in Taiwan.
Isn't that the same message that they're saying about Ukraine? We'll fight to the last Ukrainian. Now they're saying the same thing about Taiwan. Pay close attention to that. Venta Cafe, same script, different country. They're going to get these people killed. That's all they're about. Just one war after, just one conflict after another. That's all they care about, because, again, it's all about profit. There's money in that for the military industrial complex. It's disgusting. And I honestly don't understand why it's not as obvious to more people by now. I really don't. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Holy Sabby, Jose got a call from the Capitol Police in D.C. asking him about why he was protesting in New York at Jeffrey's event last week, as if getting him fired wasn't enough. Asking him, will you be visiting Jeffrey's again? What would have to happen if you weren't escorted out? I DM'd you his statement on Twitter, an audio recording of convo that took place between him and Goon escorting him out of the building. That is crazy. That's very, very crazy. So you see, Hakeem Jeffries apparently called the cops on Jose. Called him for what? For what? Oh, there's two of me. Okay, and thank you for this tip, Jim. They can't go 1 year without Sabby Sabs kicking Rockfin ass and taking names and looking so lovely doing it. Oh, thank you so much, Jim. That's really sweet. Poor Jose, man. Poor Jose. I don't know. Maybe he'll be on call-in tonight. I'm not sure. Let me go to some of these comments here and we'll go to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. There's a YouTuber named Li Jingjing who covered the situation with China and Taiwan recently, and one of her guests brought up the presence of NGOs and US aid in their schools. Thank you for letting me know that. I will check that out. Thank you, Ashura. The pro-war rally was 200 compared to 2 last week, 2K last week. Yeah, I saw that too. Leroy, what's up? There are people invading. It's just gentrification. Are you talking about DC? That's a good point. The Oracle says the United States is not involved in anything that is not a prelude to advancing the cause of capitalism, which underpins its imperialism and hegemony. Angela, remember when the Dems lost their collective nummies over the fact that Trump called the leader of Taiwan right after he was sworn in, saying it was unheard of to break the one China policy? There you go. Saul says there's no profit in peace. Nope. Thank you for the super chat, Free Food. The U.S. is definitely crazy, but Danny blah, 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 blah. Let's try this again. The U.S. is definitely crazy, but Danny also oversimplifies the situation. Go visit, do your own research, and talk to people. There's no easy fix. Thank you for that, Free Food. Thank you, Ali. These warmonger politicians are going to get us wiped out of the map right after the economy crashes beyond repair. Bill, striking fear is the point of their policing, as opposed to what? Our cops that have military grade equipment they use regularly? That's a good point. Good point. And speaking of good points, we are getting to someone who makes a lot of them, and that is Professor Wolff. Now, Professor Wolff, Democracy at Work. I used to cover these at least once a week, and then I think I got busy and forgot about it. But this segment here, we need to talk about mega corporations ruining our world. And I think there's some interesting things that are said here. And we're going to take a look at 3 mega corporations that I think you need to be aware of in reference to what else they own and what else they control. So the name of this video is called Economic Update: Are Mega Corporations Ruining Our World? And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Before we do so, if you haven't had a chance, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you very much.
Mega corporations, and by that I simply mean the 1, 2, 3 large corporations that dominate so many different industries in the United States, typically use their economic power, strength, and size to buy political and cultural influence and power. They do that by buying mass media, being the great advertisers whose words and ideas you see all the time on the...
Hold on to buying mass media. That one's huge. We'll get to that in a second.
Mass media, by donating to political parties and politicians much of the money they need to maintain their activities, hiring and firing and organizing lobbyists to work with the elected officials between elections, and thereby to control political power. We know all of that. You don't need me for that. What I'm doing is responding to their reality. And that reality has recently been brilliantly analyzed over and over again by Ralph Nader, Chris Hedges, and many, many others well known to many of you. So let's begin with a thumbnail critique of the mega corporation in our culture. Most of them, many of them, are monopolists. That is, they are the only big fish in their industry. And in that position, once they've acquired it, they can then jack up the price of whatever it is they sell because they're the monopolists. There's nowhere else to go.
Yep.
You know, the famous example from American history, which I'll come back to, is the telephone. At a certain point, one company called AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph, was the phone company. And they enjoyed saying to you, if you made a complaint about what they were charging you or the service they got for you, they would giggle at the other end of the telephone line they owned by telling you you can always go to their competition. Ha ha ha, there wasn't any. Now, sometimes monopolists have gotten themselves into trouble by this kind of behavior. You know, today, for example, we have two examples, Walmart and Amazon. Both of them have destroyed thousands of small mom and pop businesses around the country, and even some medium-sized, bigger than mom and pop businesses. They've been
even some of the ones that were actually really profitable back in the day. If you go to the Cambridge Side Galleria here in Massachusetts, the Gap is gone. Like, these are like name brand stores, like the Gap, J. Crew, all of them wiped out that whole third floor because people just aren't buying clothing the way that they used to in the stores because they can get everything online. Like, a lot of people are buying those things from Amazon. Like, I'd never seen that before, where it is gotten to the point where you walk into the mall and the entire third floor of the mall is wiped out. And I remember when they announced that they were closing those stores, and I was like, where's everybody going? And they said, don't have the sales. So we're closing up the third floor, all of the stores on the third floor, and it's going to be sold to commercial businesses because the Gap doesn't make the money that it used to make. J. Crew doesn't make the money that it used to make. These stores were really popular. Like when I was in high school. Express doesn't make the money they used to make. A lot of people were able to get some of the same, like similar style of clothing online for cheaper. And Amazon is one of those sites that you can go to get those things. So it has affect, you know, not just the mom and pop businesses that he's referring to, but even some of these name brand larger businesses like the Gap, for example. It's crazy.
Been a horrific destructive force in countless communities. Okay, that has gotten them a lot of opposition. There have even been communities that have blocked an Amazon warehouse from being located there, or blocked a McDonald's hamburger or a Walmart because they don't like what it means. So often monopolists realize they can defend themselves better if they don't become the only one. Instead, when the competition winnows down the number of producers to 2 or 3 big corporations, they stop. They don't go to the ultimate one left because that will be a target for criticism. They have a stop sign. We'll stay with 3 or 4.
Yes. And this is important. Newton, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston, actually 15 minutes outside of Boston. Newton, Massachusetts actually is one of those cities that made that rule that they will not allow a Walmart to be built there because they didn't want that to destroy the mom and pop businesses there. And they have a lot of them in Newton, like even the hardware stores, mom and pop as well. The Target originally that's in Watertown, Massachusetts, actually wanted to come to Newton, Massachusetts. Again, Newton, Massachusetts said, no, we don't want that here. Because again, we want to protect the mom and pop businesses. That's also a wealthy, that Newton's pretty wealthy. So just keep that in mind. They had the power and the numbers to prevent that from happening. So that Target ended up in Watertown, Massachusetts, which at that time was more of, as they call it here, a blue collar town. So that's another thing. If the town or the city has the resources and the numbers to prevent a Walmart or a Target coming in, it's a lot easier for them to take care of that versus some of these towns that are working class or these towns that are poor. They may not have those resources to prevent that from happening, unfortunately.
By the way, in economics, that's called an oligopoly instead of a monopoly. Monopoly one, oligopoly of few. The best example is the automobile industry, which started in the 1930s with 30, 40, 50 car companies and then winnowed itself down to 2 or 3, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, and so on. What is typically done by these big corporations is what we call unfair competition. They're big and they use their bigness, sort of like a bully would, by insisting that suppliers give them a better deal on inputs than the little guys get, or making sure that whoever they sell to privileges their brand over any competitors.
Amazon is notorious for this. And there is something I want to give people a heads up about with Amazon. It used to be that Amazon actually did have the cheaper prices. But you know what I started to notice probably about 3 years ago? I started to notice that Amazon didn't necessarily have the cheapest prices anymore. It was something I started, and then it was kind of like, if you already had Prime, so you didn't have to pay for the shipping anyway, but the price of the product was still higher than it was at the actual store. I started to notice this and pay attention to it. But Amazon was notorious for that, is to like, we have everything. Walmart, same thing. We have everything now. So how do you compete if you're a business? How do you compete with Walmart if you don't have everything? How do you compete with Amazon if you don't have everything? And how do you compete with those companies if they're able to deliver? They have this Prime, they're able to deliver packages to people within 1 to 2 days. How do you compete with that? What's the company, Etsy? How do you compete with Amazon? eBay, how do you compete with Amazon now? Like, it's really difficult to do that. So yeah, in a sense, it is unfair competition.
It's important to understand that capitalism has always tended to produce monopolies and oligopolies. It's built in to the system. And the easiest way to explain it is to tell you and to remind you, because I know most of you know this, that competition, efforts by little and medium-sized businesses to outproduce one another, to offer a better service or a cheaper product or a better product, that always produces winners and losers. Those who do well and their product sells, and those who don't. What you may not understand is that not only are there winners and losers, but the winners absorb. Literally, they eat up the loser. A
good example of this, and I'll go back to it, was JP Morgan, right? So we talked about this before. We talked about the crisis that happened with the banking industry and JP Morgan. I always forget the name of it. I have to go back and check. But JP Morgan actually saved the federal government, and the banks that were already failing, JP Morgan basically consumed those banks or devoured those banks, so to speak. And JP Morgan became bigger because of it. They had the money to do so. And they were known as, they rescued the federal government at that point in time. But it's true. He's right. The winners, they usually devour the competition that's left, or what's left of it.
Company that goes out of business has to sell its equipment on the used equipment market. You know who buys it? The winner. The people who lose their jobs in the company that is outcompeted, you know where they look for a job next? In the company that won that competition. So what slowly happens is many producers, through competition, become a few. And if it keeps on going, it becomes the oligopoly or the monopoly. That's why the next time you hear some glib politician or some even glibber businessman or woman tell you about the wonders of competition, you're entitled to sneer. Competition is what causes monopoly and oligopoly. And then there are cases when competition is deliberately removed. Here's an example. You're a big corporation and you buy your inputs in the market, whatever they are. And after a while, you realize you're never quite sure you'll be able to get exactly what you want in the market, at the quantity you want, at the price you want. And so, tired of using the market, you buy the company, you absorb it. It's called vertical integration. You literally go out there, and instead of buying the product from the other company, you buy the company. So that production of that input becomes internal to your enterprise rather than external and have to be bought in a market.
Amazon is also known for doing that.
Once again, when you hear on the 4th of July the joys of our market economy, please remember that large corporations almost always are the result of many decisions made by the company's CEO and board of directors to get rid of the market, to remove the market from their situation by bringing the other companies that they used to buy and sell from to the inside. And you know when they bring them inside, how it's all worked out? By economic planning. The very thing that you denounce as socialism is what every large company does inside because it's gotten rid of the market outside because it wanted to make more profits and have them be more secure.
Very, very wise words there from Professor Richard Wolff. Now, if you want to see the full video, because there's other things he talks about, he gets into like vertical integration and things like that. But I wanted you to see that particular portion. But the name of this video is called Economic Update: Are Mega Corporations Ruining Our World? And I think this is really important for people to see. Go listen to the full segment. I listened to the full segment, but I want to show you exactly what he's talking about, like what it looks like. And I want to show you this using 3 different companies. The first company I want to show you is everyone's favorite feisty mouse, Disney. Now, Disney owns a lot of things, and you may not be aware of all of them. So let me make this bigger. Oh, wait, the mouse is on this one. So there is this graphic. It's hard to see it in the graphic, so I'm just going to show you a little bit here, and then I'll show you the companies that are listed. But this is the mouse ears. You see Marvel. Remember Disney? Remember they bought Marvel? So you have Marvel. Then you have Fox Entertainment Group. There's Walt Disney Studios. There's ESPN. There's more and more, but it's easier to see it here where they list them. I'm going to make this a little bit larger just for the people in the Bizac. What companies does Disney own? And this is important to see. So here's a much simpler list of companies Disney owns that aren't as obvious or don't sport Disney in the name. ABC, ESPN, 80% stake, Touchstones Pictures, Marvel, Lucasfilm, A&E, Lucasfilm, for those who don't know, that's like Star Wars. So remember they brought Star Wars at 1.2. A&E, 50% equity holding with Hearst Corporation, the History Channel, 50% equity, Lifetime, 50% equity, Pixar, Hollywood Records, Vice Media, 10% stake, Core Publishing. So that's a few. And now I want to point to something. ABC. I want to think about news. Think of all the news networks that are on ABC. And maybe not necessarily just news, but even some of the talk shows like The View, and think about some of the political takes that those women have on that panel. These things are important. Let's go on. What does Disney own as far as recognizable brands and film franchises? So that's Star Wars, The Muppets, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney Princess and Princess, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, Pixar films, Winnie the Pooh franchise, Indiana Jones franchise, Grey's Anatomy, which is a popular show on ABC. What companies does Disney own that you never heard of? Maker Studios. Get this one, guys. Hold on. Maker Studios. It's a production company for popular YouTube channels that has since been folded into other areas of the company after a troubled few years. So Disney even had their toe dipped into the YouTube space. Steamboat Ventures. It's a venture capital company that invests in web top startups. For instance, the popular GoPro, Photo Bucket, and a host of Chinese social media and gaming companies. They also own dozens of miscellaneous property companies from Alani to Port Canaveral, Florida. Many of these are leftover companies from when Walt had to hide his investments through other company names to buy land for Walt Disney World. International media networks, see? This is what he was talking about. International media networks like ATV, RTL2, RDS, Tele5, Kivudu aren't heard about here, but are a big deal abroad. Earthstar Inc. is the company for private jets to cart Disney executives around the world. And then it goes into what they don't own. Now, that's Disney. Let's move on to another company I think you need to look at. Amazon. Now, I mentioned Amazon owns other things. Imagine that. What companies does Amazon own? Let's dive on into this list here. Companies owned by Amazon, Whole Foods Market, Zappos, that's the shoe apparel company, Amazon Robotics. And Amazon Robotics is also a part of other corporations, which include the Gap. Remember I told you the Gap was closing? The Gap, Walgreens, Staples, Gift Group, Office Depot, Crate and Barrel, Saks Fifth Avenue. So even if you go to these stores and you think that you're actually helping out just that company and you're not giving your money to Amazon, looks like if you follow the train, you're still giving your money to Amazon. Isn't this a mess? Let's go on. There's more. PillPack Inc. Now, this is a pharma company, an online pharma company based in Manchester, New Hampshire. They even have their hand in the pharma industry. There's more. Twitch Interactive. I don't really mess with Twitch, so you guys, if you do Twitch in the chat, let me know. MGM Holdings Incorporated. That one is pending. Let's go on. Audible. I knew that one. Audible is the most popular audio book platform in the world. I think you guys probably knew that. Goodreads. IMDb. They're the ones that give the plot summaries for like movies. If you look up a movie, it has like the IMDb thing. Ring, which I think some of you knew this. That's the security system that's owned by Amazon. Lab 126. This is a subsidiary Amazon uses to develop and manufacture its branded lines of integrated consumer electronics, such as Kindle, Echo, and Fire TV. Amazon Fresh. And this one even it's in international cities, such as Berlin, Hamburg, London, Milan, Munich, Rome, and Tokyo. Abe Books, another online marketplace for books. Woot, an online retailer based in Dallas, Texas. And I'm showing you guys this because you may be ordering things from these companies and not realize that you're still supporting Amazon. And 15 and more additional companies owned by them. Book Depository, Blink, Shopbop, Cosmicology, Eero, Zoox, Fabric.com, and Annapurna Labs. So Amazon owns quite a bit. Now we're going to move on to one that a lot of people have not even heard of, but you should know about BlackRock. And I've talked about it before on this show, and I'm going to talk about it again because you need to know BlackRock is the biggest company you've never heard of, but you also need to know that this is very important. A media monolith, BlackRock and Vanguard are two of the big three passive fund asset management firms. Third is State Street. That's important for people to know. Now it should have on here who do they own. I thought it was on here. Did I skip it? Let me know if I skipped it. I thought I saw it on here. They mentioned, if not, I should be able to remember some of it off the top of my head. Yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna have to look this up again. Shoot. Balls. I thought I had this in here. Who does BlackRock? No, you guys hold on a second because you need to see this. Thought I had that one, but do 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 do. What? I just want to show it to you because I like to show it so that way you can always refer back to it. Oh, this is the one, I think, the portfolio. Balls. Eric, let me know if you see it in that article. I thought it was in that article. I thought when I read it, it was there, but I could be mistaken. Now it's hard for me to find it. I hate this. Don't you guys hate this when this kind of happens? Just a second. Because I had all this like, aha, I found it. That is the right link. So let me see. It's probably because I made it bigger. Okay, so that is the right one. There's a list there where it says found it. Okay. Sorries. So I passed it. So let me go back up right here. Vanguard and BlackRock are the top two owners of Time Warner, Comcast, Disney, and News Corp, 4 of the 6 media companies that control more than 90% of the US media landscape. And that is all I really wanted you to see here in this part 2. This is something you need to share with everybody. Vanguard and BlackRock are the top 2 owners of Time Warner, Comcast, Disney, News Corp, 4 of the 6 media companies that control more than 90% of the media landscape, thus controlling the media narrative, controlling the narrative that goes out in mainstream media to as many people as possible. Now, there's more. Together, BlackRock and Vanguard own 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, 13% of Comcast, which owns NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and the Sky Media Group, 12% of CNN, and 12% of Disney, which owns a number of subsidiaries. So in long story short, forget what I showed you about Amazon, or don't forget it, but remember Amazon, remember Disney, but at the end of the day, it all leads back to BlackRock and Vanguard. And that's what people need to know. And people need to talk more about that. Just keeping it real. They control the narrative. I'm going to go to some of these comments here. Professor Wolff is always on it. JB says, I have tried to buy things straight from the manufacturer and they redirected me to Amazon. I hate it. Yep. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Yep. Monarch, Monopoly, Oligarchy. The Oracle says, when you think about it, a political system with just 2 major parties is an oligopolistic model. Fraught with the same weaknesses, a consolidation of power through the absence of competition. You know, our next story is going to get into that. Kill your Gorgies, as Jimmy Dore says, you'll have in the future 3 job options: Amazon, Google, or Walmart. It's funny, but it's scary. That could be true. JB, Sabby, Disney basically owns Orlando, Orange County, Kissimmee, St. Cloud, Osceola County, etc., a huge chunk of Central Florida. Wow. I still have never been to Disney World. Can you guys believe it? And thank you for the super chat, Takwish. I hope I pronounced that correctly. My profile picture is the Separatist Alliance. Nerd-wise, the Separatist Alliance was right to fight against the Republic, given how the military-industrial complex works in real life, gives way to an ideological argument. Interesting. Thank you so much for that, Takwish. So yeah, Richard Wolff was right. There's probably others out there, but those are the ones I think you really need to pay attention to. All right, we are going into our final story, which is about Nina Turner and the need for someone to primary Joe Biden. Now, first, I want to start off with this poll. This is new. This is recent. Poll finds that Trump is beating Biden, but DeSantis, Haley losing. I'm just going to read this short part here. I'm not going to read the entire article, just the part about the poll. Former President Trump is leading President Biden in a blah, 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 blah. I can't talk tonight. Is leading President Biden in a hypothetical 2024 matchup, while Biden leads former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, according to a new poll released on Tuesday. So see, now Trump is ahead of Joe Biden in the polls. Trump holds a 4-point lead over Biden, with 46% saying they would support the former president in a rematch in 2024, and 42% saying they would back the current president. And this is coming from the Emerson College poll. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because recently, Nina Turner had an interview. She was on a panel on CNN, and the discussion of Joe Biden having a primary challenger came up. And of course, you guys know Marianne Williamson has said that she is going to primary challenge Joe Biden. I think you need to hear this discussion. There's a couple of things that I noticed. You know, I'll give credit where credit's due, but there was also something I did notice about this panel that I felt like there were areas where there should have been pushback where there wasn't. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Let's go ahead and dive in to this issue here, whether or not if Joe Biden should run in 2024 and how they feel about someone primary challenging Joe Biden.
I think the problem that Democrats are going to face is that Biden is not without risk. He would be the oldest man elected president. There are moments when he seems feisty and ready to fight Republicans. And there are moments that do leave doubts in the minds of voters who are watching. Whenever you ask voters how they would feel about, say, a Donald Trump versus Joe Biden rematch, there's a very negative reaction to that prospect that we could be going through that again in 2024. But the problem Democrats have is, if not Biden, who? That's a huge question mark. The sitting vice president in polls that my firm and others conduct doesn't tend to do very well against potential Republican contenders. There are others on the list: Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, California Governor Gavin Newsom.
First of all, why are they even floating around Pete Buttigieg's name as a possible contender for president for 2024 when Pete can't even do the job that he has right now? Pete is struggling to do the transportation position that he has right now. So why are they trying to tote Pete's name around for president for 2024? Let Pete learn how to do the job that he has. Because my thing is, this is a big red sign to me, a big red sign that, like, if all of these things have happened under Pete's position as Secretary of Transportation, then how would he lead the country? I wouldn't vote for Pete anyway, but how would he lead the country? So I can't even believe they're even like mentioning his name as a possibility, given everything that's happened so far.
All got issues. And so right now, in some ways, I think Republicans would love to run against Biden. On the other hand, I think Democrats have to be a little nervous that if it's not Biden, then who would it be?
Do you think there's no need to be nervous? I mean, we got to feel people should just jump in. Let's jump in. Let people jump in. You got Marianne Williamson out there saying she may run.
So he should be challenged, President Biden.
Absolutely. He should be challenged.
Notice how the other woman asked that question. So he should be challenged. Like, why is that even a question? Like, does it, you know, the thinking, I think, around politics in this country is just so, it's just so binary. Like, people are not thinking of other options or other possibilities. It's just like, this is what is presented in front of us, and let's not think outside of the box. And that bothers me because I like to think outside of the box. So it just kills me that, like, people are like, well, if not Joe Biden, then if someone's going to primary challenge Joe Biden, oh God, you think that should actually happen? Why not? Now, again, like I told you guys, I don't care. If they're running in the two-party system, they're not getting my vote. If you're running this Democrat or Republican, you're not getting my vote, period. That's just how it is. But that being said, does that mean that someone should not be able to primary challenge him? No, I disagree with that. If they want to do it, they should be able to do it. But the idea and the narrative that is coming from mainstream media is that, oh my God, I can't believe that this is even happening, or this should never even be considered as a possibility. I've shown you multiple clips where they said things like the media should just not give her much attention. Like, this is the way of thinking that we have in this country. Don't think outside the box. Just deal with what is presented in front of you and work with that. Isn't that sad?
Voters deserve.
Nina and I agreeing on everything.
This is one where I don't agree. That's okay. Voters deserve, right? This is democracy. This is not a dictatorship. Voters deserve to have choice, period. And
let's go back to this part about democracy. This piece here.
Nita and I agreed on everything.
This is one where I don't agree. That's okay. Voters deserve, right? This is democracy. This is not a dictatorship. Voters deserve to have choice, period. And I rock on the freedom fighting side of the ledger.
Voters deserve to have a choice, and this is a democracy. But this is what I've argued on this show, is that we actually don't have a true democracy in this country, because if we did, third-party candidates would be on the ballot just as easily as the Democrat and Republican candidate. They wouldn't have to gather all these signatures just to appear on the ballot. They wouldn't have to be smeared by mainstream media because they're running as a third-party candidate, because they're running as an independent. They wouldn't have to go through all of that. They would get just as much media airtime as someone running through the duopoly. They would be guaranteed a spot on the debate stage, just like the Republican and the Democratic candidate. So we really don't have, this is what I'm saying. If we had a true democracy in this country, all these issues that come up with voting every year, where people are closed out of the polls, or the machines or whatever isn't, I gotta be careful what I say, machines or whatever isn't working, and things like that. In a true democracy, would that be an issue? Nah, that's the problem. We don't have that. Anytime you have the Democratic Party, the DNC can make a statement saying that they are allowed to pick candidates from a back room. That's not a true democracy. Anytime President Barack Obama can pick up the phone and tell other people to drop out to help Joe, that's not a true democracy. It means that the person that they wanted has already been selected. And that's what the party is going to rock with. And anybody else going against that person is going to get shafted. That's just the reality.
I want to see a robust debate. One of the things that our campaign did in 2016 and also in 2020, I'm talking about Senator Bernard Sanders, is we lifted the debate in terms of what people really need and deserve in this country.
But the big difference was, back then, at that time, the sitting president. See, this is what we got to go back to. At that time, 2016, 2020. So Barack Obama, 2016, he had just finished 2 terms, so he could not run again. So basically, you had like a vacant seat in the White House, right? 2020, the sitting president was Donald Trump. He's a Republican. So when we talk about having a vigorous debate, I think we need to remember what was different back then versus what is different now. First of all, number one, Marianne Williamson's challenge is going to be getting on the debate stage to begin with. How is she going to get on the debate stage if she's primary challenging Joe Biden? You know they're going to make it tough. This is not to say it can't happen, but the DNC can come in and say, yeah, we're not going to have a debate. They can do that. They can just do it. They can change the rules. We've watched them do it multiple times. They'll change the rules to let the people in that they want in, and they'll change the rules to keep the people out that they want out. That's how it works. Sorry, just keeping it real. Which again goes back to the point that we don't have a true democracy. And anyone primary challenging Joe Biden, if they're not allowed to debate, how are they going to have the opportunity to actually have a chance to win? Because let's remember, that's how someone like Jesse Ventura, even though it was a local race, that's how he was able to win a gubernatorial election, because he was able to debate, even though he was running as a third-party candidate. That's the difference. So if Marianne can't get on that debate stage, I don't even know how that is going to. But I think that we'll talk about this tonight on Call In. Let me keep it moving.
The only way to get that kind of robust debate is to have people on that stage. So on the Republican side, the more the merrier, and on the Democratic side, the more the merrier.
So what I was going to say is, when you look at Nikki Haley's announcement video, when you listen to what Tim Scott's saying, a lot of the message is like new. And I keep thinking like, yeah, well, New Coke was new, but it didn't do very well. Like, new alone is not necessarily a winning argument. And so you need to put forward something. And I'm paying attention to what's going on the right, because I'm totally in it for Joe Biden. I think he's got the record, and he's done what he said he was going to do.
All right, listen to what this guy is saying. New doesn't necessarily mean better. That's true. But what you have right now isn't better either. Okay, this is like, what you have right now is not great, which is why he has a primary challenge, which is why his polling numbers are the way that they are. because what you have in-house is not great, Mr. Man. But he gonna ride with Biden. He let you know right now, that's his dude. That's who he's gonna ride with. And now he's telling you, look at Joe Biden's record. Let's do that, shall we? How far are we going back when we look at this record? Are we just looking at his record as president, or are we looking at his whole record as a politician? Even if we want to just look at his record as president, Joe Biden did not accomplish most of the things that he said that he was going to accomplish. Now, you notice there's no pushback here. Watch this. Watch this. Hold on.
I'm totally in it for Joe Biden. I think he's got the record and he's done what he said he was going to do. And
he's got the record and he's done what he says he was going to do. Notice there are no examples. So this is where, like, for me, there needs to be a pushback. No one at this table, and you're going to see it, no one at the table pushes back on that. No one pushes back on Joe Biden's record. And no one pushes back on his statement where he says he's done the things that he said that he was going to do. What about canceling the student loan debt for students that went to HBCUs? What about that? The ones who were making under $150,000 a year? And people keep telling me that wasn't a part of the campaign promise. Oh, yes, it was. And I went back to that website and I showed it to you guys on this show. Trust, I wouldn't forget that. What happened to that? Like, what? What happened to the $15 minimum wage? Yes, he promised that. Do you see the problem? They're like, oh, well, we cut child poverty in half. You mean the child tax credit that they ended early and they took away? Let's talk about this, guys. Not one person on this panel pushes back on that statement. Let's go on.
And so I think that's powerful. But I think I don't see a message. I don't see a message coming out of the other side.
To convince voters.
New Coke doesn't work because people like original Coke, and the problem is
original Biden.
But see, this is not about Coke, though. I don't disagree with Jeff about if it's just new, that's not it. But we need a vision that provides provision for the people.
Before we go, you just heard earlier in the program the RNC chair that.
See what I tell you? Not one person pushed back on his record, which that one was easy to do. And not one person pushed back on him fulfilling his campaign promises.
She say that she is going to have candidates sign a pledge to get on the stage that they would support other candidates. Good idea?
Well, no, I think listen, I would not, take Rana's done a great job running the party. It's a very difficult time. But it's hard to enforce, right? You saw the clip right afterwards where Donald Trump said,
why does he look like Hank from Breaking Bad? This guy looks like, I just noticed this time around. He looks like he kind of reminds me of Hank from Breaking Bad. Like any minute, Walter White's going to step in and just be like, I'm the one who knocks. He does looks like Hank.
Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, right? And if he's not going to do it, then everybody else is going to say, well, we're not going to disarm.
10 seconds. Does it matter?
Republican voters do not want to see their party fight itself. They want to see their party fight the Democrats, period.
Yeah. I would hope they want to see their party serve the people, period.
But see, this is the thing about partisan politics. That's all it is. So you just heard the other woman. She said Republicans, let me go back. Hold on. Because that was like a gotcha moment. All right, let's finish up with Hank.
Do it, then everybody else is going to say, well, we're not going to disarm.
10 seconds. Does it matter?
Republican voters do not want to see their party fight itself. They want to see their party fight the Democrats, period.
Republicans don't want to see their party fight itself. They want to see their party fight the Democrats. This is the problem with political parties. It's all just partisan politics. That's it. That's all it is. So Nina is right with this next point when she says, I would hope that they would want to fight for the people. None of these parties want to fight for the people. All these parties do, especially the ones, the politicians in DC, all they do is fight for their donors so they can keep getting donations and they can keep their seats. They fight for Democrat leadership. Now, the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party, that's a different thing. That's actually what the squad was supposed to do. And they took those reins and did that on the Republican side. But in the Democratic Party, they fight for their donors so they can keep getting that donor money. All they want to do is do that, and they want to fundraise and keep their seats. And then they'll stay there long enough so that they can get a pension and so that they can write a book. And then they'll have speaking engagements where they can charge $500, $1,000 for these engagements. And they just become a career politician. And a lot of these people who said they didn't want to be a career politician, once they got there, that changed. For most of them, that changed. So Nina goes on to say,
yeah, I would hope they want to see their party serve the people, period.
Amen.
All right. Wow. We agree on
Look at
something.
that. Kumbaya.
Thank you so much, everybody.
She just said, I hope they want their party to fight for the people, but they don't. Neither of them do, though. That's the thing. This isn't new. Now, moving on, there's another clip that I want to show you. And shout out to K-Steady QB for this clip as well. Former Joe Manchin comms director discussing polls showing Democratic primary voters against Biden in 2024. Listen to what he says, because I think this is very telling about the progressive, or what's left of the progressive energy, and what usually happens.
37% keep Biden, 53% someone else. How troubling is that for the White House, Jonathan?
Not troubling at all. Those 53% are, I guess, the Democrats who don't like winning. I'm of the Democratic wing of the party that likes to win elections. So I can't.
Stop it with the wings. I want to disrupt this here and say something. There is no different wing. I used to believe there was a different wing too. They're all corporate controlled. The party is a corporation. So let's stop this with, I'm of the wing of the party that wants to win. I'm a wing of the party that's corporate. I'm a wing of the party that's progressive. All you mofos in the same corporate party. Period. 53%. Let's go on. By the way, this doesn't include me. Most people from my generation are not a part of this poll. Most of us millennials and Gen Z, we are not included in this poll. 53% want to see someone else. 53%. But go on, Mr. Wing of the party.
How troubling is that for the White House, Jonathan?
Not troubling at all. Those 53% are, I guess, the Democrats who don't like winning. I'm of the Democratic wing of the party that likes to win elections. So I can't wait for Joe Biden to announce he's running again. Can't wait for Donald Trump to be the nominee. I think you're only going to see a bigger margin of victory for him in 2024 after.
You really think that? You know what I think will happen this time around? He thinks that Biden will have a bigger margin of victory. You know what I think will happen this time around? Because this isn't 2020 this time around. I think more people will stay home. Let's go on.
What he's accomplished in the last 4 years. So no, I think a lot of that is progressives who are upset that he didn't go far enough. I think those people all come back home the second he's the nominee and the second he has no opponent.
37%.
That part right there is the part that we all need to be paying attention to. I do agree with him. This last piece he says here, he says, well, he thinks those are progressives that are not happy with him. Not all of them. Not all of them. I know some people who are not progressives who are definitely just typical liberal Democrats that voted for Joe Biden that do not want him to run in 2024. Just keeping it real. They don't agree with the policies that I want. And they heavily supported Joe Biden. Like, no doubt about it. Was never going to support Bernie Sanders, was never going to support any type of progressive politician. And even some of them said they don't want him to run in 2024. This is just people I talk to, people out and about on the street. Not on Twitter, not on Facebook. But what he says right here at the end is the problem that kills progressive energy. And don't be surprised if it happens again.
Accomplished in the last 4 years. So no, I think a lot of that is progressives who are upset that he didn't go far enough. I think those people all come back home the second he's the nominee and the second he has no opponent.
37%.
He said all those people come back home the second he's the nominee and the second he has no opponent. And I do have to admit, that is one of the problems with trying to put a progressive, so to speak, through the Democratic Party. Because every time Bernie Sanders ran, what did he do when he told you, when he lost, what did he say? Support his corporate Democrat opponent, the same people he told you need to fight back and push back against. He's just going to capture that youthful, young, powerful, vibrant, what could be possible revolutionary, radical energy, and he takes it, he gets you hyped up, and he funnels you right back into the Democratic Party, which is corporate owned. The question that people have for Marianne Williamson, now that she's primary challenging Joe Biden, is she going to do the same thing? If she loses, which I believe that she will, this is not me trying to be mean, I'm just keeping it real because I know the tricks that they play. But if she does lose, which I think she probably will, is Marianne Williamson then in turn going to tell you to do the same thing? Go ahead and vote for Joe Biden. Because we already know there is no question of if Trump is running. Donald Trump is already running. And to that, I say this, and we're going to talk about this on Call-In tonight. To that, I say this. If that is the case, if that is the way that it is going to be, if you're just going to take progressive candidates and they're just going to tell you to vote for the corporate Democrat because vote blue no matter who, then what is the point of having a progressive candidate run at all? Let's talk about it on Call-In tonight. I think I need to change my time. I always got to do this on Call-In. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I run into these issues. I ain't gonna over talk. I haven't changed my time on here. Anyway, we're going to talk about that on Call-In because that's what I want you guys to answer that question. What is the point? Is it worth it? Some people say it is worth it because you still get the discussion on a national stage. But that's if they even allow them to have a debate. So I think I don't want to, sway you. So I'm just going to stop mentioning that now. But I want you to think about that because that will be the Call-In discussion. And then we're going to go ahead and skedoodle to that poll. I'm ready whenever you are, Eric. I am in the okay, here we go. The poll question: do you feel the US is trying to start a conflict with China? 92% of you said yes, 3% of you said no, and 4% said not sure. That was 607 votes. Interesting. I don't think I've ever had a poll that's that the results are that extreme. Usually there's more no's and more not sure's, but very different, very different. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our last spotlight of February because today's February 28th and this is no leap year. So tomorrow is March. So we have been doing spotlights for Black History Month. And I've been trying to feature people that you may not be as aware of. And so tonight's feature, she's an author. You may not have heard of her lately. She was more popular a couple years ago. But tonight's spotlight is Terry McMillan. And why are we talking about Terry McMillan? That's because she is well known to those of you who have seen these movies, which actually started as books. So I want to tell you a little bit about her work. Some of you may know we are not roasting Angela Davis again. Who put that in the chat? Who put it here? Yes, I know. I totally got it. You guys don't like Angela Davis. We are not. So Terry McMillan, let's talk about her here for a second. She is more known for, I want to bring up these books here. Terry McMillan, she achieved national attention in 1992 with her third novel, Waiting to Exhale, which is also a movie that stars Whitney Houston. If you guys haven't seen it, you should watch it. That book remained on the New York Times bestseller list for many months, and in 1995, it had sold more than 3 million copies. The novel contributed to a shift in Black popular culture consciousness and the visibility of a female Black middle-class identity in pop culture. McMillan was credited with having introduced the interior world of Black women professionals in their 30s who are successful, alone, available, and unhappy. You could say that again. The novel was adapted into a film of the same title, directed by Forrest Whitaker and starring Whitney Houston, Angela Bassett, Loretta Devine, and Layla Rashawn. It's a pretty good movie. And then the other one that most people know her from, in 1998, another of Terry McMillan's novels, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, was adapted into a film by the same name, starring Angela Bassett and Taye Diggs. So that's how a lot of people know her. She was very popular at that point in time. I'll tell you about some controversy about her work, or what some people consider to be controversial about it. But there was a question asked to her in an interview. I'm going to play her answer to that question, and then I'm going to explain some of the controversy that some people had around her work.
I'm Rebecca Keegan for Time. Today, Terry McMillan, author of bestsellers like Waiting to Exhale and How Stella Got Her Groove Back, is taking questions from Time readers. Her next book, Getting to Happy, comes out September 7th. Hi, Terry. Thanks for being with us.
Hi. Thank you.
This question comes from Riley Keaton in Chardon, Ohio. Question is, you create strong women characters. Are these characters inspired by any role models you had when you were growing up?
Well, my mother was a strong woman, but I don't really think of them so much as being strong characters. I believe that I don't like writing about victims, and I don't like writing about passive characters. I find them boring. So if writing about women who think for themselves, are willing to take risk, and are responsible for their own well-being and happiness, if they're considered strong, then so be it.
This question comes from...
Okay, let's talk about that for just a second. So Terry McMillan, we're going to talk about the controversy here. Now, you just heard that question that was asked of her. You have to think about the time period. I think this is very important for people to understand. This was the time period where, more women were told that, it's okay to be independent. It's okay to, you don't need a man. And so some people had criticism of Terry McMillan during this time period because they felt that her novels actually encouraged Black women to push away Black men, because the impression that some people were getting from her novels was that she was telling women, like, you don't need to have a man. You can do it all on your own. And actually, if you watch the movie Waiting to Exhale, that is a message that is kind of pushed in the sense that, like, it's for women. They all have relationships with men. Well, I want to tell the movie, but damn. But anyway, long story short, in the end, they realize they don't actually need those guys to be happy, right? And some people felt like her novels, it pushed Black women into that space that they did not need a man. And then some people said that because Black men were pushed away, they felt like, well, I'm going to date a white woman because Black women read Terry McMillan and they watched her movies and she told them that they don't need us. So I'm going to go date white women. So some people blame Terry McMillan for all of that happening. Now, to me, a book is a book. It's just a book. Like, I don't know. It's just a book. But there was this thing back then where there was more. This is also during the time when there was more Black apparel, like FUBU was, there's FUBU, there's Cross Colors. It was more popular at that point in time to be pro-Black. So you saw that a lot in movies like Menace to Society, movies like Boys in the Hood, etc., yada, yada. And they felt like her stories just painted Black men in a bad light. To me, it was work of fiction, but some people took it that way. But that is the last feature for February, and that is Terry McMillan. I don't know what Terry McMillan is up to today. What's that, Jonathan? Also, Sabby, she was groundbreaking in her writing because her books were put in mainstream fiction book sections, which was very rare for a Black author. That's right. That's a good point. Good point to mention. Yeah. But we can't sit up here and blame Terry McMillan for... I don't know, man. We can't blame her for all of that. Like, all the men are leaving and everything. I'm like, she's a writer. She's writing books. So that's just how I kind of take it. Stella got her groove back, though. I think that was loosely based on her experience. Like, she was the older woman and she did fall in love with the younger guy. I think later on, her mate, he came out as LGBTQ, and there was a whole thing about that. There's an Oprah episode about this. Find it somewhere. Find it somewhere online where she was on there and she talked about it. And yeah, no, Vintage Cafe, we're not going to roast her like Angela Davis. Oh, God. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'll come back and we'll head on over to call-in. Ready whenever you are.
All right. How's everybody doing here on this, what day is it? Tuesday. We lose track of the days sometimes. All right, so this is where we give Sabby a little break before we jump into the call-in. I put the link in the chat. I'll put it in again. I think Sabby will probably post it in as the pin chat soon here. But yeah, our call-in show will be starting soon. You can hit that link and hit it and view it in your browser, or you can use the call-in app on your phone. Hey, Aaron. Hey. And so while we give Sabby a break, I'm going to hit some comments we had. Let's see. Yeah, Mastermind Hour saying until they get rid of superdelegates, the Democrats should be forced to remove democracy from their name. Yep, and yeah, we know both parties are just really not very democratic, put it that way. From Sakudo, said, well, he did say they were going to fund the police and stop Medicare for all, talking about Joe Biden, whether or not he is doing what he said he'd do. And of course, there's that famous quote he had that he didn't want people to hear, saying to the rich folks that nothing will fundamentally change. And we know how that's going. Although old Joe Biden, he has managed to bring us closer to nuclear war and killing us all than any other president. So I guess that's an accomplishment. Thanks for the super chat, Mr. Roger Meadows. Kept promise. Apparently one. I got two. Apparently everyone. Roger's abbreviating here for the to fit it in the $2 YouTube chat. Let's try this again from Roger. Kept promise. Apparently everyone got $2K except me. Thanks for that, Roger. And Bill Bradley saying, being in U.S. Congress is the only job you can have that makes insider trading legal. Pretty good deal if you want to get rich. Yeah, it's one of those, good work if you can get it type of jobs. And they can make their own laws and rake it in. From JB Font, hey JB, that's like saying I'm a different tire on the same car. No matter what, you're still part of the same broke-ass car who can't get down the road. Well put there, Mr. JB. King of the analogies. Thanks for this super sticker, Aaron. Thanks for that. And from Has-Been Hotel, I think the tricks they will play will be even worse. As we know, the Dems in the media would rather have Trump versus a quote-unquote progressive. And yeah, I mean, that makes me think about, one thing I like to say is there simply, at this point, there are zero progressives in Congress. It's really not a thing. One term that's out there is the fulgressives. And the idea, with democracy, do we have a democracy? And I like to say we have a democracy of dollars right now, is how this system works. So the more money you have, the more votes you have, the more power and influence you have. And in answer to Asher's question, what is the call-in topic tonight? Here, actually, let me see if I can bring up that page. Let me play around with our little systems here. We got a tab for this somewhere here, I think. I thought we had a tab for that. Let's see. We got too many tabs. Sabby showed a lot of tabs, a lot of things tonight. Here we go. All right, call-in tonight is, I'll show that. Dun, dun, dun. Nina Turner agrees with Biden primary challenge is the topic tonight, and getting into this idea of is it worth doing a primary challenge within the Democratic Party. And of course, most of us are kind of past the whole party game, the whole idea of it should be one party or another party. And, it's become clear to us, or at least clear to those of us that are, really watching this stuff, is that both parties serve the same big money, corporate warmongering interests. And so whether you're voting for one or the other, and it's not making much of a difference. And so then people will say, understandably, and I can't blame the sentiment, but people will say, well, then I'm not voting, all we got is these two corrupt parties, I'm just not voting. And I understand the sentiment, but it doesn't get us to fixing anywhere. It doesn't get us to systemic change. It doesn't simply not participating. The power structure in the parties, they frankly don't care if you don't, whether or not you vote. They really don't care unless they know they have your vote for them. And so if you simply sit it out, they're fine with that. I mean, if the voting percentage goes down to like 1%, they'd be like, oh, okay, fine, we'll just work that 1%. So then it's like, what do we do, right? It's in terms of what's and what I'm saying is we need to figure out. Well, first, what's the problem? The problem is the money. So we need to be dealing with the money and make that our focus. And we need to leverage that into a mass movement is where I've been trying to come from. And not simply drop out of democracy itself. All right. I've done my spiel for the moment.
Yeah, and, we'll talk about it tonight.
All right. We'll see you in call-in.
Okay, so tonight's call-in discussion, this is episode 84. I can't believe we're almost to 100 already. Good grief. Nina Turner agrees with Biden primary challenge. I didn't mean to capitalize with. Anywho, in a recent interview, Nina Turner states that Biden should be challenged and the American people should have a choice. Another clip mentions that progressives will vote for Biden in the end if he is the nominee. So is a primary challenge worth it if they can't win? And especially if progressives are going to go ahead and go along with the corporate Democrat who will probably be the nominee anyway. Is it even worth it? So let's talk about that tonight on Call-In. The link is pinned to the top of the chat, and we will go ahead and head on over there. So you guys, I'm not here tomorrow, but I will be on Kim Iverson's show tomorrow, her exclusive show on Rumble. We're going to talk about this issue with the Supreme Court and canceling student debt. So check me out over there. I believe that will be 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So 3:30 for those of you on the West Coast. So have a good night. Keep up the fight.